Maybe it has been a long day. The air feels heavy, and your thoughts keep circling like quiet tides that have nowhere left to go. You can rest now. Let your shoulders soften. Let the noise fade. Somewhere in the stillness, a faint current begins to move, gentle, almost imperceptible. It is the sound of your inner world calling you back home. In the language of Jung, this is the night sea, a journey through darkness where the soul learns to breathe again. Nothing here demands effort. Nothing asks you to change. The water only waits for you to stop struggling so it can hold you. Every transformation begins this way, not with motion, but with stillness. Solitude is not absence. It is the first invitation of becoming. The room is quiet enough to hear the soft tick of a clock, and the air carries the mild scent of wood and warm fabric. On an inner wall that no one else can see, there is a row of wooden masks, smooth with use, each one shaped by a habit of the heart. One looks calm and capable. One shines with gentle kindness. One is almost transparent, as if built for the days when a person hopes to pass unnoticed. He reaches for them the way people reach for a coat before stepping into weather. The capable face is light at first, then heavy by noon, a weight across the brow that keeps every worry from leaking out. The kind face smiles without asking how the jaw feels. The invisible face fits too well, and in its comfort, there is a quiet ache. The ache of being safe and unseen at the same time. Jung once said that the mask is not a lie but a tool, a way to meet the world without leaving the skin too raw. The trouble begins when the tool forgets it is a tool, when the mask grows to the shape of a life and the life bends to please the mask. A person can become fluent in the gestures that calm a room and still feel a slight tremor inside, a small signal that something true is waiting with patient eyes. In the mind's small theater, daylight scenes repeat with careful precision. He nods at the right moments, offers help before anyone asks, carries an extra load so no one has to look at their own. The script works. The room settles. Yet the breath stays a little shallow, the shoulders stay a little lifted, and the silence after conversation feels dense, as if the air itself now holds what could not be spoken. The mirror above the sink does not argue. It simply returns a face that has learned the economy of expression, a face that can hide need and pass for ease. It is not a false face. It is an adapted face. An adaptation is how people survived long before they knew the words for it. But the mirror carries a second image behind the first, a softer outline that seems to steady whenever the room grows still, as if the truest features emerge only when attention stops performing and begins to rest. Persona protects the skin, yet skin must also feel the weather to remember it is alive. The person who never takes off the armor forgets the pressure of wind, the touch of rain, the relief of shade. It is not drama to set the armor down. It is housekeeping of the soul, a small clearing of a crowded hall where the masks have hung for years. There is a quiet moment when the hooks stand empty and the wall looks larger than before. And that space is not hollow. It is a promise. A simple practice can be kept like a folded note in a pocket. Write down 3 roles carried today: the strong one, the kind one, the unseen one. Then ask in a voice that does not rush, when no one is watching, which of these remains in place and which falls softly to the floor. The night does not demand an answer. It asks for a breath as steady as a tide and a gaze that can meet the mirror without rehearsal. He will still wear the faces he needs when morning comes, but the order has changed. The face beneath has been seen, and seen faces learn to stay. You are not your performance. There is a kind of heaviness that does not come from the body. It settles quietly on the shoulders, invisible yet constant, the way mist gathers on a window before dawn. At first, it feels like purpose, a reason to stand straight, to keep moving. But after years of carrying it, the back begins to curve, and the soul forgets what lightness feels like. Persona, Jung once said, is not the enemy. It is the clothing we wear to meet the world, necessary, protective, even beautiful. Yet no matter how fine the fabric, the longer one wears the same garment, the more it begins to define the skin beneath. The thread between who we are and who we appear to be tightens, and the breath shortens under its weight. The weight of expectations is rarely imposed by strangers. It grows from love, duty, and the quiet fear of disappointing those who depend on us. It begins with small gestures, the practiced smile so others will not worry, the easy "I am fine" that spares a friend the trouble of asking more. These gestures feel kind, even noble, yet over time they harden into reflexes. A person becomes fluent in the language of composure, nodding when they wish to shake, soothing others while their own pulse trembles. There is grace in that restraint, but there is also fatigue, the kind that hides beneath politeness and polite laughter. Every mask, no matter how sincere, leaves a line on the face, and every line tells a story of adaptation, of someone who once chose peace over honesty because the world did not seem ready for the truth. But silence, if it lasts too long, begins to echo. The inner voice, once soft, turns hoarse from waiting. What was once strength becomes survival. What was once self-control becomes self-erasure. Jung saw this fatigue as a symptom of identification, the moment when a person no longer remembers where the role ends and the soul begins. There is a quiet experiment for those who wish to feel the difference. Choose a single day to stop performing calm. Let the expression fall from your face the way leaves fall from trees at dusk. Slow, soundless, inevitable. Speak less. Do not rush to fill silence with reassurance. Notice how the air around you changes, how the absence of your usual smile unsettles some and frees others. There may be a hollow space at first, a sense of emptiness where the familiar effort used to be. But that emptiness is not a void. It is the first breath of authenticity. When the day ends and the quiet feels heavier than you expected, do not fix it. Sit with it. Let the shoulders rest where they naturally fall. The world will not collapse because you stopped pretending to hold it up. In truth, the world never asked you to. It was your own kindness that mistook silence for neglect and calm for strength. Silence, after all, is not withdrawal. It is the breath of authenticity, the sound a soul makes when it finally exhales. Some mirrors do not crack. They simply fade. Over time, the surface dulls, not from neglect, but from the steady breath of someone always rushing, always trying to be enough. Every exhale clouds the glass a little more until one day, the reflection disappears into fog. Kierkegaard once said, "The crowd is untruth." He did not mean that people are dishonest, but that the truth of a single soul cannot survive when buried beneath the noise of imitation. When life becomes a repetition of gestures copied from others. The same smiles, the same ambitions, the same polite sorrows. Something silent inside us begins to forget its own sound. There is a subtle violence in living too well adjusted to the expectations of the crowd. It begins gently, disguised as belonging. We say what is safe to say. We feel what is acceptable to feel. Over time, that safety dulls the edges of awareness, the way a river smooths stone. The mind, once alive with sparks of thought and contradiction, begins to prefer agreement over truth, comfort over clarity. In this quiet erosion, the self becomes an echo, fluent in the language of others, but unable to form its own. What remains is not emptiness, but a hum, a low vibration of something waiting to be named. To return to the naked mind is not to reject the world. It is to return to the place inside us that the world cannot touch. It is a gentle stripping away, like removing layers of dust from a painting to find the color still bright beneath. When we stop performing, even for a moment, the fog on the mirror begins to clear. The image that returns is unfamiliar at first, not prettier, not stronger, just real. Its eyes do not seek approval, they only ask to be seen. There is a simple practice for this kind of seeing. Choose a day when you will not play a part. Do not try to be wise or kind or composed. Do not perform calm for others, and do not disguise sadness as grace. Write as if your hand belonged to no one, not to a name, not to a title, not to a role. Write what breathes beneath the surface, a thought unfinished, a fear unnamed, a memory that lingers even when uninvited. Do not edit it, do not justify it. The truth does not need decoration, it only needs air. You may find that your words wobble, that they sound too raw, too uncertain. Let them. The mind does not need to be polished to be understood. It only needs to be present. As you write, the mirror slowly brightens. The fog thins. You begin to notice that what you feared as emptiness is simply space. Space wide enough for the real self to breathe. When the masks fall, the soul begins to breathe. It does not gasp for attention or approval. It breathes the quiet air of its own freedom, soft and steady, like dawn returning to a landscape that never stopped being there. There is a room in every life that no one visits anymore. Its door stays closed, its windows sealed, its air thick with the dust of forgotten days. At first, it was only a corner meant for storage, a place to put the words we should not say, the anger that burned too long, the grief that embarrassed us with its persistence. Over time, we locked it from the inside, convinced that ignoring it was the same as healing. Yet even behind a locked door, something still moves. The silence there has a pulse. It waits. Jung called this hidden space the shadow, the unlit half of the soul where the unwanted and the unspoken gather like old furniture under sheets. It is not evil, only unacknowledged. Every emotion we refuse to feel becomes a tenant there. Every impulse we judge too harshly takes a seat in the dark and begins to hum. Eventually, that hum grows loud enough to reach the rest of us. It echoes through irritation, jealousy, impatience, all the small discomforts we blame on the world. What we call dislike is often a reflection, the glimpse of something in others that mirrors what we will not name within ourselves. Think of how quickly we judge. A stranger's arrogance, a friend's stubborn silence, the colleague who craves attention, all stir something immediate. That spark is not random. It points to an unfinished lesson, a fragment of self left unattended. The more we fight it, the more vivid it becomes, pressing its face against the glass of awareness, asking not for punishment, but for recognition. The shadow does not seek to ruin us. It seeks reunion. To reject it is to reject a part of our wholeness. Sometimes the simplest act of courage is not to fix, but to witness. When anger rises, or envy, or shame, resist the urge to explain it away. Sit with it like you would with an old friend returned after years of silence. Write what it feels like without reaching for meaning. Just the shape of it, the temperature of it, the way it moves through your body. Do not demand redemption. Observation is enough. When a storm is finally allowed to exist, the air after it clears with astonishing gentleness. The unseen room is not waiting to punish you for abandoning it. It waits to be dusted, to be opened, to breathe. Light does not destroy what it touches. It only reveals form. When you turn the handle and let a little daylight in, you will notice that the walls are not as cracked as you feared, and that the air, though heavy at first, carries a strange sweetness of recognition. The shadow is not an enemy. It is a forgotten guide, one that never stopped trying to show you where you left yourself behind. There is a mirror we all carry, though few ever see it clearly. Its surface is coated with the dust of our own fears, and so the reflections that appear upon it are never quite true. It does not hang in a room or stand on a wall. It follows us quietly, turning every encounter into an echo. When we meet another person, the mirror tilts ever so slightly, and suddenly their gestures, their tone, the way they breathe seem to reveal something about them. But more often, it is something about us. Jung called this projection, the act of placing what we cannot face within ourselves onto others. It is not deceit, only blindness, the kind that comes from trying too hard to look away. Projection begins softly. It hides in the language of judgment, the casual remarks that slip from the tongue without thought. We called someone selfish because they remind us of the times we wanted to claim more but feared being unloved for it. We criticize the proud because we have not made peace with our own need to be seen. Even compassion, when exaggerated, can be projection, a way to tend to another's wound so we never have to look at our own. Each accusation becomes a clue, pointing inward toward a part of the self still waiting to be acknowledged. The mirror distorts not to punish, but to reveal. Like a glass that has been left untouched for too long, its surface collects dust until the image it gives back is warped and uneven. We mistake those smudges for flaws in others, unaware that they belong to us. The more we reject what we see, the thicker the dust grows. One day, the reflection disappears entirely, and we no longer recognize that what we call the world has become an arrangement of our own unfinished feelings. There is a simple practice for clearing this mirror. The next time irritation rises, a tone that offends, a face that stirs discomfort, pause. Before the mind rushes to label, ask quietly, what part of me is speaking right now? The question is not an accusation, but an opening. Often, a surprising tenderness follows. The recognition that the person before us is not our enemy, but our messenger. In that brief moment of awareness, the mirror clears just enough for light to pass through. We begin to see that rejection does not remove what we dislike. It preserves it. What we push away continues to live within us, disguised, patient, waiting. But the moment we allow it to exist, its grip loosens. understanding becomes a kind of cleansing, gentle, silent, without force. The mirror does not lie. It only waits for us to stop hiding behind its fog. And when we finally wipe away the dust, we find not an enemy staring back, but a reflection softened by truth. What you reject, you keep, until you learn to love it enough to let it go. Light is often mistaken for purity, for the absence of shadow. But true light does not erase darkness. It enters it slowly, without violence. In every painting, the beauty of form exists only because of the places where light cannot reach. The same is true within us. We long to be illuminated, to live untouched by what we call our flaws. Yet those unlit corners are what give shape to our humanity. Jung believed that when one turns toward the shadow, the goal is not to destroy it, but to integrate it. To understand that darkness is not the opposite of light, but its companion. Individuation, the slow process of becoming whole, begins in that meeting. There is a moment when awareness stops fighting. Until then, we search for light as if it was something distant, an achievement, a prize, a new identity made clean. But light that burns too fiercely blinds. It turns introspection into punishment, truth into self-judgment. The light that heals is softer. It flickers like a candle, its warmth gentle, its reach patient. It does not demand confession, it invites conversation. When we sit with the darker parts of ourselves, the jealousy, the anger, the shame that lingers like smoke, something within them begins to loosen. They were never trying to destroy us. They were trying to be understood. The mind learns balance in the same way a hand learns to draw, by tracing contrast. A shadow beside brightness teaches depth. A flaw beside kindness teaches grace. Imagine a painting with no shadow at all, flat, sterile, unbreathing. Now imagine a life that allows contrast. Days of certainty and doubt, moments of serenity and longing, flashes of forgiveness among the scars. That texture is what gives the soul dimension. Without it, perfection becomes a mirror too polished to reflect anything real. There is a quiet practice that can help this integration. Write a letter to the part of yourself you most avoid, the one that makes you wince, that you hide beneath apology or humor. Write as if you were speaking to a friend who has waited too long in silence. Do not explain. Do not correct. Simply say, "I see you. You can rest now." Then read the words aloud, not with pity, but with softness, the way one might speak to a child who misunderstood what love required. That voice, gentle and unhurried, is the beginning of healing. As light moves through the room, the shadows do not vanish. They shift, they blend, they find their rightful place among the colors. So it is with the soul. Wholeness does not arrive with blinding illumination, but with quiet balance. The recognition that what we once feared is part of what allows us to feel at all. Integration is the first form of peace. It does not announce itself. It simply arrives, like evening light crossing a floor, warm and weightless, turning everything it touches into belonging. There are nights when silence feels wide, stretching farther than the mind can wander. It is not emptiness, though it wears the shape of it. It is the quiet terrain between what has ended and what has not yet begun. Jung wrote of such places as thresholds of transformation, where the soul lingers before stepping into its next form. Loneliness in this light is not an enemy. It is the desert within, vast, still, and waiting for us to stop running long enough to hear what lies beneath the sand. The desert at night is not lifeless. Each grain of sand glimmers faintly, catching the faint memory of distant stars. Every thought we have ever tried to bury lies there, small and countless, shifting under invisible winds. We fear this landscape because there are no distractions in it, no noise to soften the sound of our own breathing. But what feels like isolation is, in truth, a cleansing. When the world goes quiet, the self finally has room to speak. What it says may not be loud or clear. It may arrive as a pulse, a memory, a question without words. Yet that is how growth begins, not with certainty, but with stillness. The loneliness we resist is often the same space our transformation requires. Between loss and renewal, there is always a desert. The old identity has already dissolved. The new one has not yet taken shape. And so we stand in a kind of sacred suspension. It can feel unbearable. This not knowing, this silence that stretches like heat across the horizon. But in that very stillness, the old stories crumble and their dust becomes soil for what comes next. The mind learns to trust the rhythm of silence, to understand that no sound is also a kind of music. There's a small practice that helps the heart remember this. Sit in a dark room for 10 minutes. Do nothing. Do not reach for light or for meaning. Let the air settle around you. Let the breath slow. Notice how the first minute feels endless, how the mind fidgets for noise, how it tries to escape. Then, as the minutes pass, something shifts. The silence stops feeling hostile. It begins to cradle you, gentle as sand cooling under the moon. The desert within is not a punishment. It is a passage. Every soul must cross it at some point. The stretch of stillness, where the echoes of who we were fade, and the whisper of who we are becoming begins to form. Loneliness is not the absence of love. It is the teacher silence sends, reminding us that even in our most desolate spaces, life continues to hum softly beneath the surface, waiting for us to listen. Every voice wants to be heard, but few dare to listen to their own when it no longer matches the chorus. In the great square of life, where words and approval drift like wind, a person learns early how to speak in harmony, how to echo the rhythm that pleases the crowd. It feels safe there, surrounded by applause that confirms belonging. Yet, as Nietzsche once wrote, to live authentically is to risk isolation. The danger is not in losing the crowd, but in losing the sound of your own voice beneath its echo. The crowd's echo is subtle. It begins as encouragement, the warmth of agreement, the nods that tell us we are on the right path. But soon, the warmth becomes dependence. The same voices that once comforted begin to dictate. What was once affirmation turns into expectation, and what began as connection slowly becomes confinement. You start shaping sentences not by what you mean, but by what will be received. You laugh a little louder, speak a little less honestly, and before long, the sound returning from the crowd is no longer an echo of truth, but a mimicry of what you think will be accepted. The marketplace of opinion is a noisy place. Each thought competes to be seen, each feeling adjusted for resonance. In this constant exchange, silence becomes suspect, solitude mistaken for weakness. But authenticity does not thrive in noise. It grows in the pauses between it. To withdraw from the crowd is not to abandon humanity. It is to step far enough back to distinguish your reflection from the shadows of others. From that distance, the echoes soften, and the whisper beneath them, the one that has always been yours, begins to return. There is a quiet practice to help remember this. The next time you hesitate to follow an inner pull, fearing it might be misunderstood, write a single question. If no one praised this, would I still want it? Sit with the answer, even if it arrives as silence. Often, silence is the truest response. It strips away the applause, the imagined reactions, the need to be validated. What remains is choice, raw, unadorned, real. The echo of the crowd will always exist, just as mountains return the call of a traveler. But echoes fade when we stop shouting into them. The voice that endures is quieter, more deliberate. It no longer seeks to be admired. It seeks to be aligned. Solitude, then, is not exile. It is the birthplace of clarity, the place where thought meets truth, where noise dissolves into understanding, and where a person learns that to stand alone is not to be empty, but to be full of their own sound. There comes a point when running no longer works, when distraction, noise, and movement lose their power to mask the quiet ache beneath. It is then that stillness appears, not as a reward, but as an old friend we have ignored for too long. At first, its presence feels uncomfortable, even threatening. Stillness has a way of showing us everything we tried to outrun. Yet beneath that initial unease, something tender waits. A reminder that solitude was never trying to harm us. It only wanted to sit beside us until we remembered how to breathe. Loneliness turns into companionship the moment we stop fighting it. Like moonlight reflected in a lake, truth becomes visible only when the surface is calm. The mind is that lake, disturbed by thoughts that ripple and distort the reflection of who we are. We keep stirring the water, replaying memories, rehearsing futures, hoping movement will bring relief. But the more we move, the murkier it becomes. When we grow still, even for a breath, the reflection begins to return. The moon has not vanished. It was only waiting for the water to rest. To befriend stillness is to stop demanding that silence speak. It is not a void to be filled, but a presence to be met. Many fear silence because it feels like absence. Yet in its center lies the richest form of company, the self, awake and unadorned. The rhythm of the breath becomes language. Each inhale carries the memory of being alive. Each exhale the soft release of control. In this space, there is no need to perform calmness or chase meaning. Life simply hums through the body, wordless and steady, like wind through leaves or the faint pulse of the earth beneath the floor. There is a simple meditation to invite this companionship. Sit somewhere quiet. Close your eyes and listen to your breath as though it belonged to someone you love. Do not count. Do not control. Let each breath arrive as it wishes. Notice how the body loosens its grip when it is trusted. Within a few moments, the noise of the mind begins to settle, and in the clearing that follows, you might feel the soft presence of something larger, not outside you, but within you, breathing too. Stillness does not demand faith or proof. It asks only for presence. When it finally becomes familiar, you realize it was never separate from you. It was the patient witness of every joy and sorrow, the quiet rhythm beneath every sound. Stillness is not loneliness cured. It is loneliness transformed. The moment solitude folds into peace and you no longer feel apart from the world, but a part of it. Stillness is the most honest companion, and once you learn to sit with it, you are never truly alone again. There is a quiet figure that sits at the center of the mind, proud, watchful, and endlessly busy. It wants to protect us, to define us, to make sense of a world that rarely listens back. This is the ego, the small king inside, who believes that to exist is to control. It builds walls of certainty, crowns itself with importance, and guards the fragile boundaries between self and other. Without it, we would lose direction. But when the small king forgets that he is not the sun, his light blinds rather than guides. The ego is not the enemy. It is the gatekeeper. It organizes chaos into meaning, shapes our identity, gives us the strength to say, I. Yet, like a candle mistaking itself for daylight, it burns too fiercely when left unobserved. It fears being dimmed, so it demands to be right, to win, to be seen. Every argument becomes a battlefield, every disagreement a threat to the throne. But beneath the armor of certainty lies something softer, a trembling awareness that it is only protecting what it cannot yet understand. The ego defends, but the self observes. In daily life, this small king shows up quietly, in the moment we interrupt to prove a point, in the pride that resists apology, in the unease we feel when others succeed. It whispers, "You must win," not because it is cruel, but because it believes victory keeps us safe. Yet, when the ego wins, the heart often loses. What we protect with walls, we also imprison. Jung suggested that growth begins when the ego bows, not in defeat, but in recognition of something larger behind it. The self, the silent witness that does not need to be right to be real. There is a small practice that helps loosen the crown. The next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, when the heat rises, when the need to be right takes hold, pause, breathe. Instead of feeding the flame, turn toward the smoke. Ask gently, what part of me feels small right now? Then listen, not to the noise of justification, but to the quiet pulse beneath it. Often, the answer is not anger or pride, but fear. The fear of disappearing if we stop fighting to exist. The candle that believes it is the sun burns out quickly. The one that knows it is only a spark learns to light the darkness without needing to conquer it. The ego's strength lies not in control, but in surrender, in allowing itself to serve the self instead of replacing it. When that shift occurs, the mind softens, the heart opens, and the small king inside finally learns his true role. Not ruler, but guardian of awareness. The ego defends, the self observes. And in that quiet hierarchy, peace is restored. There is a still point within every storm, a quiet axis around which the winds of thought and emotion turn. It doesn't speak. It does not argue. It simply remains. Jung called this the self, the whole that holds every fragment without judgment. Most people never truly meet it, not because it hides, but because the noise of the world grows too loud to hear its silence. Yet, no matter how far we wander, no matter how many roles we wear or battles we fight, the self never leaves. It waits like a compass beneath the waves, steady even as the sea rages. In moments of chaos, the ego rushes to steer. It panics, thinking control will save the ship. It shouts over the thunder, charts new routes, and exhausts itself trying to hold the horizon still. But the self is not found through control. It reveals itself in surrender. When the hands unclench, when the mind stops shouting orders, a strange calm begins to surface. Not because the storm is over, but because something deeper has remembered that it was never truly in danger. The center has not moved. It was only covered by noise. The self is not a new identity waiting to be discovered. It is the space that holds every identity we have ever worn. It is the witness behind the actor, the silence beneath the music, the sky that stays untouched while clouds pass through. When we feel lost, it is not because the self has vanished, but because we have mistaken movement for meaning. We chase recognition, validation, and success, hoping to find a sense of home. Yet, the home we long for is not somewhere out there. It is the quiet awareness that has been observing the search all along. There is a simple practice to return to the center. Take a moment to write down 3 things that make you feel at home with yourself. Not achievements, not compliments, but sensations or moments that ground you. It might be the warmth of sunlight through a window, the rhythm of your own breath, or the feeling of understanding something deeply. As you write, notice what each image has in common: stillness, familiarity, a sense of belonging that does not depend on anyone's gaze. That is the language of the self: quiet, patient, constant. The compass does not control the storm, yet it always points north. The self works in the same way. It does not erase chaos. It simply reminds us that within the spinning world, something steady endures. The more we return to it, the less we are ruled by the wind. The mind softens, the pulse slows, and life begins to move with, not against, its own current. The self never leaves. We only forget the way back, and remembering is all it takes to find our home again. At dawn, there is a moment so brief that the eye almost misses it. The instant when darkness softens, but light has not yet claimed the sky. In that fragile in-between, 2 suns meet. The smaller one that ruled the night begins to fade, and the larger one, silent and patient, rises from behind the horizon. This is the meeting of ego and self, the turning point of inner alignment. The small light bows, not in defeat, but in reverence to the greater light that has always been there. For most of life, the ego believes it must hold the sky alone. It burns with intensity, mistaking its effort for importance. It measures worth by how long it can shine, how many eyes it can warm. But the self does not compete. It simply exists, radiant without striving, steady without recognition. When the ego learns to bow, when it finally grows tired of defending its crown, a quiet shift occurs. The struggle between who we think we are and who we truly are dissolves into light. This surrender is not collapse, it is clarity. The small sun sets only to reveal the larger one already rising. To surrender, in truth, is to remember rhythm. Life was never meant to be controlled, it was meant to be danced with. The waves do not fight the tide, nor does the dawn rush its own arrival. The self moves through surrender, not through will. It waits until the ego has exhausted its resistance, until every attempt to control leads only to more chaos. And then, gently, it opens the door to peace. In that still moment, we realize we were never steering. We were only learning how to let go. In daily life, this meeting happens quietly. It is the breath you take before responding instead of reacting. It is the silence after an argument when truth settles heavier than words. It is the calm that comes when you stop insisting on a certain outcome, and suddenly everything finds its own order. To see this clearly, try a simple reflection. Write down one moment when you stopped forcing and things began to flow on their own. Observe what followed, not as coincidence, but as the gentle choreography of alignment. When ego and self meet, the light changes, the edges blur. The effort to prove gives way to presence. What once felt like surrender now feels like belonging. To live from this union is not to abandon the small self, but to let it rest, to let it orbit instead of dominate. Like the sun that sets only to feed the dawn, the ego learns that letting go is not the end of power, but its transformation. To surrender is not to lose. It is to align, to move with the quiet rhythm that has always carried us toward the light. Fear rarely enters through the front door. It lives quietly inside the mind, disguised as caution, comfort, or reason. It whispers stories of what might go wrong and convinces us that safety is the same as peace. But fear does not come from the world. It comes from our imagination about what could be lost. The world moves as it always has, wind, chance, time. Yet we tighten our grip as though control could stop the tide. And in that grip, a cage begins to form. Imagine a bird born to fly who one day locks its own cage. The bars were never forced upon it. They were built out of thoughts, of doubt, of what-ifs, of the echo of old pain. The bird believes the wind might hurt, that freedom might be too vast to survive. So it stays still, convincing itself that stillness is safety. But the air beyond the cage does not threaten, it invites. It waits with patience, knowing that one day the door will open, not because someone frees the bird, but because the bird remembers it was never locked at all. Fear is the mind's attempt to bargain with the unknown. It says, if I stay here, I cannot be hurt. But nothing alive can avoid change. The walls we build to protect ourselves eventually become the same walls that suffocate us. When we refuse to risk, we refuse to grow. Jung once wrote that neurosis is the result of a soul that has refused its own destiny. The spirit trying to breathe inside a cage it built for itself. Every time we avoid discomfort, we trade a piece of life for a fragment of control, forgetting that control is the heaviest illusion of all. There is a quiet practice that helps dissolve the bars. When fear appears, do not argue with it. Instead, ask a single question. If I were not afraid, what would I do right now? Do not rush to act, simply imagine. Feel the shape of the answer, how it expands the chest, how it feels lighter than the story fear tells. Sometimes that image alone is enough to remind you of your wings. With time, the imagination that once built the cage begins to imagine freedom instead. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to stop letting fear lead. When we loosen our grip on control, something remarkable happens. The world does not collapse. It breathes with us. The wind that once seemed dangerous begins to sound like music, and movement feels like life again. The cage, when seen for what it is, dissolves into open sky. Courage begins where control ends, and the bird, at last, remembers how to fly. Every beginning feels like breaking. The seed cracks open and believes it is dying, not knowing that a fracture is the first sign of life. So it is with us. Each time the ground shifts beneath our feet, we mistake movement for danger, forgetting that no star was ever born without chaos. Nietzsche once wrote, "One must still have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star." Uncertainty, then, is not a punishment. It is the pulse of creation, the trembling before transformation. We spend much of life trying to outrun the unknown. The mind builds plans and patterns, hoping that predictability will protect us from pain. But the truth is simpler and less kind. Control soothes, but it also numbs. Without uncertainty, we cannot grow, because growth requires the risk of not knowing who we will become. Just as the seed must split its own shell, we must shed the skin of certainty to reach the light. What feels like breaking is only the body making space for what's next. Chaos, when seen through fear, looks like destruction. Yet, when seen through patience, it reveals design. The night sky is full of disorder, scattered light, vast emptiness, but from that seeming randomness, galaxies form. The same law moves through us. Every confusion, every unanswered question, every heartbreak is a small rearrangement of the inner universe, preparing it for new alignment. The pain of not knowing is the friction of becoming. There is a simple way to make peace with this trembling. Do one small thing that makes your heart race but does not harm. Something unfamiliar, uncalculated. Speak a truth you usually swallow. Take a walk without a destination. Sit in silence longer than comfort allows. These gestures remind the nervous system that uncertainty does not destroy. It awakens. In that small quickening of the heart, life whispers, "You are alive, not trapped." The discomfort that once felt like danger becomes the rhythm of movement. Proof that something inside still dares to reach. We often imagine stability as safety, but a life without uncertainty is not peace. It is stagnation. The seed that refuses to break will rot instead of bloom. The dance of existence demands both order and chaos, both balance and trembling. To love life fully is to love its instability, to bow before the unknown and let it teach us how to move again. The beauty of uncertainty lies in its honesty. It never pretends to be still. Growth always trembles first, and in that trembling, the new world quietly begins to form. There comes a moment when the room we have lived in for too long begins to shrink. The walls hold memories. The air carries the scent of old comfort. Yet something inside starts to press against the stillness. We tell ourselves the room is safe, but safety is not the same as life. Change knocks softly at first, then louder, and when we finally open the door, light spills in, not to erase what was, but to remind us that the world outside has been waiting all along. Change is not a threat. It is life's natural response to itself. A river doesn't fear its own current. It bends, carves, and reshapes the land because movement is its nature. The same is true for the soul. To resist change is to dam the flow of what wishes to grow through us. We call it risk, but change is not random. It is feedback. The body adjusts to keep balance. The heart breaks to make room for deeper love. The mind questions to stretch its walls. Each shift, no matter how small, is the language of life speaking through us, saying, "Keep moving." Still, the familiar holds power. We stay with what we know, not because it fulfills us, but because it does not frighten us. The old job, the fading relationship, the patterns that no longer fit, they feel safe because they are known. But comfort can be a quiet form of captivity. When we cling too tightly, we mistake the routine for identity. The room feels smaller each day, yet we keep the door closed, fearing what waits beyond it. But the truth is simple. What we resist is often what will renew us. To begin shifting this, try a gentle practice. Write down one thing you are holding on to only because it feels familiar. A belief, a habit, a story you keep repeating. Then ask yourself, does this still serve me? Not whether it is good or bad, not whether it is easy or hard, only whether it keeps you alive. Sit with the answer, even if it whispers instead of shouts. Sometimes awareness alone loosens the hinges. The door begins to open not by force, but by clarity. Every transformation starts the same way. A quiet doorway, an invitation to step into light. Change does not ask us to become someone else. It invites us to meet ourselves anew. Each ending, each letting go, is only a threshold disguised as loss. Beyond it, life waits. Different, yes, but not unkind. The courage to change is the courage to breathe deeper, to open windows in a stale room, to trust that what enters will not destroy, but refresh. Freedom is the courage to meet yourself anew, and the door has been waiting open all along. Not all love nourishes. Some kinds leave us hollow, like pouring water into a cracked glass. We keep giving, hoping the act itself will fill the emptiness, but the more we pour, the less remains. It is not that the love is false, it is simply misplaced, born not from fullness, but from need. When love begins as an attempt to fix the void within, it becomes a transaction disguised as devotion. We give to be seen, to be chosen, to prove that we matter. Yet every act of proving is a quiet confession of doubt. Jung once suggested that the greatest task of the soul is to balance giving and being. To love from wholeness is to let affection flow through us, not out of us. But many are taught to love as sacrifice, to measure worth by how much they can offer, to call exhaustion generosity. This is the love that drains, the one that says yes when the body aches to rest, that smiles when the heart is breaking, that confuses martyrdom with care. It begins tenderly, but over time it corrodes the spirit, because it gives not from strength, but from fear of losing connection. Real love, the love that restores, moves differently. It does not chase, it invites. It does not demand to be proven, it proves itself through peace. When love comes from fullness, it feels like breathing, effortless, rhythmic, self-renewing. It doesn't need constant reassurance because it is rooted in the truth of being, not in the approval of others. Such love can endure absence, withstand silence, and still remain soft. It is not blind devotion, but clear awareness. The kind that knows that to truly give, one must also remain whole. To understand which kind you hold, begin with a question. Ask yourself, am I giving to be loved or because I already am? Write the answer somewhere private and read it in the quiet of your own breath. If it stings, that is not failure, it is clarity. Awareness does not take love away, it refines it. With time, the cracked glass can be mended, not by withholding love, but by learning to hold it without leaking. The act of self-awareness is itself an act of love, a promise that what you share will be real, not desperate. Love is not meant to empty us. It is meant to circulate, to return as warmth rather than depletion. When we stop giving from lack, love begins to change shape. It no longer grasps, it glows. It no longer measures its worth in sacrifice, but in serenity. The heart learns that it was never unworthy, only tired. Love that needs proves it doubts, but love that rests in itself heals everything it touches. Kindness without boundaries is not compassion, it is surrender in disguise. We are taught to be gentle, to forgive, to understand, and these are sacred acts. But when gentleness forgets itself, it turns into exhaustion. True kindness does not mean giving endlessly. It means giving wisely. A garden without a fence is not free. It is unprotected. The flowers may still bloom, but without boundaries, they will soon be trampled. Jung often suggested that the path toward wholeness requires discernment, the courage to say no when the soul grows thin. Many mistake kindness for compliance, believing that to deny is to harm. Yet every yes spoken against our own truth is a quiet form of self-betrayal. We give until our roots dry, we listen until our silence hurts, we help until we forget what rest feels like. The world praises this as virtue, but it is only imbalance. Care turned inward into depletion. Boundaries, then, are not the opposite of love. They are its structure. They keep tenderness alive by giving it space to breathe. The nature of boundaries is not to push others away, but to preserve the energy that makes connection possible. A garden's fence does not reject the world. It simply says, enter gently. When you begin to honor your own limits, kindness becomes clearer, not colder. It no longer grows from guilt, but from choice. You stop rescuing those who refuse to swim, stop apologizing for resting, stop explaining why peace matters. You begin to trust that protecting your energy is also protecting the love you offer. A simple practice can help return you to this truth. Write one sentence you have been afraid to say, a single no that trembles on your tongue. It might be, no, I cannot do that today, or no, I do not owe an explanation. Write it slowly, breathe as you do, and imagine the calm that would follow if you spoke it. This is not rebellion. It is alignment. Each time you honor your limits, you remind life that your kindness is sacred, not infinite. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls, but walls isolate. Boundaries clarify. They mark where you end and where another begins, not to separate, but to strengthen the meeting point between souls. In this way, boundaries become bridges, quiet structures built from respect. Through them, love stops leaking and starts flowing. Relationships shift from dependency to reciprocity, from demand to balance. The heart feels lighter, the breath easier, the giving purer. To love well, you must learn to stand firm. Compassion does not bloom in depletion, it thrives in balance. The flowers in the garden do not apologize for their fence. They flourish because of it. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are devotion to the part of you that gives meaning to every act of care. Boundaries are bridges, not walls, and through them, kindness finally learns how to last. When the mind quiets, love changes shape. It no longer rushes to explain, to impress, or to be understood. It softens into something simpler, a calm awareness that says, I am here. True connection does not happen through words, but through presence. Two people sitting together in silence can be more deeply linked than those who speak endlessly without listening. When the heart is still, even breath becomes conversation. We are conditioned to fill every space with sound, to prove care through advice, to mend pain through talk. Yet often, what another person needs is not an answer, but a witness. Stillness does not mean absence. It means allowing another to exist without trying to shape them. Like two candles burning side by side, connection at its purest does not consume. Each flame holds its own center, yet the light merges softly, expanding the darkness between them without taking anything away. This quiet kind of connection arises only when the ego rests, When there is no need to be right, to fix, or to perform empathy, the walls between selves begin to fade. You start to notice the subtle rhythms, the way someone's breath slows when they feel safe, the small movements that replace words, the silence that carries trust. Real presence is not about what you say, but about what you allow. To sit with another's emotion without shrinking or solving is a rare form of love, one that heals without a single touch. There is a practice to nurture the stillness. The next time someone speaks to you in pain or uncertainty, resist the urge to respond immediately. Do not reach for solutions or stories. Simply be there. Let your body settle, your breath slow. Listen not only to their words, but to the pauses between them, the quiet terrain where truth hides. Feel what it is like to share space without pressure. In that silence, you will sense something sacred, connection that exists without effort. Presence does not demand attention. It offers it. It doesn't try to change the moment, only to honor it. When two beings meet in this kind of awareness, even brief encounters become profound. The noise of the world fades, replaced by a simple recognition. I see you, not for what you do, but for what you are. And in being seen, both souls rest. This is the love that endures when words fail, the kind that asks for nothing and gives everything simply by existing. To be fully present is to give the rarest gift we possess: time without distraction, attention without agenda. Like two candles, we do not need to burn each other to bring light. We only need to stay lit, side by side, steady in the dark. Presence is the purest form of love, and in its quiet warmth, all distance dissolves. In the language of Jung, the journey toward individuation, toward wholeness, is not about becoming pure light. It is about learning to stand where light and shadow meet, and recognizing that both belong to the same source. The mind longs for simplicity, for one clear truth, but the soul matures only through contradiction. Growth does not erase our opposites. It refines them into harmony. Like metal placed in fire, we are transformed not by rejecting heat, but by enduring it until what is impure burns away and what is true begins to shine. Every person carries two currents, one that reaches outward toward strength and creation, and another that turns inward toward fear and withdrawal. We spend much of life choosing sides, hiding our vulnerability to seem brave, hiding our power to seem gentle. Yet each denial makes the self incomplete. Courage without fear becomes arrogance. Fear without courage becomes paralysis. Only when both are allowed to speak do we begin to understand the full language of our being. The opposites are not enemies. They are dance partners, learning each other's rhythm. Wholeness, then, is not perfection. It is inclusion. To become whole is to stop dividing ourselves into good and bad, right and wrong, strong and weak. It is to see that what we call contradictions are simply halves of the same truth, seen from different angles. The light teaches clarity. The dark teaches depth. One gives vision, the other gives meaning. To live entirely in light is to become shallow. To live entirely in shadow is to forget the horizon. Individuation asks that we hold both. To know joy without denying sorrow, to love without escaping loss, to move with the understanding that creation and destruction are parts of the same dance. A gentle practice can help reveal this balance. Write down two traits within you that often collide: control and surrender, fear and courage, silence and expression. Place them side by side and ask quietly, What do they need from each other? Perhaps control only wishes to feel safe, and surrender offers that through trust. Perhaps fear only asks to be seen, and courage answers through presence. This reflection is not about choosing one, but listening until both find peace in coexistence. Alchemy begins when fire meets resistance. So it is with the self. When we hold our contradictions with patience instead of judgment, transformation begins. Slow, luminous, inevitable. The heat that once felt unbearable becomes the warmth of understanding. What once divided now completes. To walk this path is to see life not as a battle of opposites, but as a continuous blending. Dawn inside dusk, strength inside softness, endings inside beginnings. Wholeness is the dance of opposites, and to join it is to finally become real. There are moments in life that arrive too perfectly to be coincidence. The book that falls open to the page you needed. The stranger who says what you could not admit aloud. The song that begins just as your heart breaks open. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, the meeting point between the inner world and the outer one, the quiet rhythm that reveals that life, when listened to closely, has been humming in tune with you all along. Meaning, he said, is not something we invent. It is something we notice. A pulse beneath the noise, waiting for our awareness to align with its beat. Imagine the world as a vast symphony. Every event, every encounter is a note in motion. Some sound loud and bright, others faint and hidden. We cannot always hear the melody because our minds are tuned to control, not to listen. But when the inner self grows still, something miraculous happens. The chaos begins to sound like music. The external world, once random, starts reflecting our internal landscape. The questions we hold quietly are answered through the coincidences we meet. The more in sync we are with ourselves, the clearer the harmony becomes. Meaning, in this way, is not an instruction, it is participation. It doesn't command, it invites. The melody of life plays whether we notice it or not, but when we slow down enough to listen, the song deepens. Synchronicity is not magic, it is attention. The universe does not rearrange itself for us. Rather, we become aware of its rhythm, and in doing so, realize we have been part of the music all along. As Jung wrote, the meeting of inner and outer events is not random, but symbolic. A sign that consciousness is expanding, that we are beginning to move with the flow rather than against it. A simple reflection can help reveal this rhythm. Write down 3 coincidences from recent days that made you pause. The friend who texted just as you thought of them. The timing of a decision that felt guided. The small beauty that appeared when you most needed it. Do not explain them away. Just look at them gently and ask, what might life be showing me through this? The goal is not to decode a message, but to notice that meaning itself has rhythm. That when the inner world softens, the outer world begins to respond in kind. The song of life cannot be forced. It can only be heard. It plays beneath traffic, beneath heartbreak, beneath silence. Sometimes it arrives as laughter, sometimes as loss, but always as motion, the unseen pulse that connects every thread of experience. The more we align with our truth, the more fluent we become in its melody. In those rare moments when everything seems to fit, when time slows and the heart steadies, we recognize the sound of harmony, not as something outside us, but as something that has always been playing within. Meaning is the sound of harmony and it waits patiently for us to listen. Every journey, no matter how far it wanders, leads back to silence. After all the searching, the striving, the turning toward and away from ourselves, there comes a moment when the movement softens. The seeking ends, not because every question is answered, but because the need to ask dissolves. Jung wrote that the final stage of individuation is not triumph, but return. A quiet reunion with the center where all opposites have learned to coexist. The self no longer tries to escape its shadows or chase its light. It simply rests, aware that both were always part of the same whole. To return to stillness is not to withdraw from life. It is to realize that stillness was never elsewhere. We spend years believing peace is something to be found in love, in purpose, in success. Yet every destination eventually folds back into the same still center we carried from the beginning. Like a wave that rises from the sea and later dissolves back into it. We are never separate from what we seek. The form changes. Now a crest, now a ripple, now nothing but mist, but the water remains. In that recognition, the fear of losing fades, replaced by the gentle understanding that nothing truly leaves, it only returns in another shape. The mind resists this simplicity. It wants progress, not peace. Definition, not quiet. Yet the deeper wisdom of life moves differently. It does not demand forward motion, but cyclical rhythm. Inhale and exhale, birth and rest, rising and return. To live in harmony with this rhythm is to stop treating stillness as an interruption and begin to see it as completion. The wave is no less alive when it merges with the sea. In fact, it is finally whole. There is a small practice to remind yourself of this truth. Sit in silence, not to achieve calm, but to listen. Feel your heartbeat, the soft pulse that has carried you through every storm. Each beat is a reminder. You are here, alive, already enough. The mind may drift, the body may ache, but beneath it all, the same quiet rhythm continues, unbroken, patient, constant. That rhythm is life itself whispering, you have never been lost. When the journey slows, when the need to prove begins to fade, peace reveals its true nature. It was never something to earn, never something to reach. It is what remains when the noise of becoming subsides, the awareness that being is sufficient. The wave does not mourn its end. It returns to the ocean, content in the knowledge that it was always water. So too with us. We do not vanish when we stop searching. We remember. The stillness we feared was never emptiness. It was home. Peace is not found. It is remembered. The night has grown soft around you now. The air carries the first trace of morning, and everything feels slower. Your breath, your thoughts, even the light. You have walked through the corridors of fear, through mirrors and storms, and somehow, without noticing when, you found your way back here, to the quiet center of yourself. The silence you once feared has become your teacher. It no longer feels empty, but full of truth, of memory, of peace. You no longer wait to be understood, because now you understand yourself. The masks have fallen, the shadows have spoken, and what remains is something simple and steady. The sound of your own being, awake in stillness. You are home again, not because the world has changed, but because you have. The searching has ended, and what was hidden has become clear. Everything you seek outside has always lived within. The dawn arrives, not to begin a new day, but to remind you. you have already returned.